Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Wisdom Exchange number 6. Can you believe it's number 6 already? We are going to go more intuitive today because yesterday was a bit more pragmatic. We did the 5 primal things about connecting back to sleep, movement, diet, stress, relaxation, and the social networks. Today, we're going to talk about the Bruce Lee mindset, about be water, my friend, and how we can incorporate that mindset into our own life and our own philosophy. Because Bruce Lee was an amazing martial artist, and again, in art, it flows. And we talked about the flow state as well a couple of live streams ago. And we can see life as an art where we can take certain practices in art, in martial art, whatever these kind of practices are, and apply that to life. Now, again, I'm no expert. I'm still learning, but when I do apply these into my life, it does get me past certain challenges. Whether I feel a bit stuck and not moving, or whether I feel I'm moving too much and to slow down and detach. Again, go slow to go far. Like I say in my coaching. So we're going to go through the vapor state, we're going to go through the solid state, but then we're also going to go through the aqueous or liquid state. So like you learn in science, like, right? Gas, liquid, solid. And we're going to see how the human mind can also be in that state and how we can actually draw upon these states like it mimics nature, how we can draw upon these states from Bruce Lee's quote and how it can help us in our life. So that's why we're doing it. That when we feel stuck in certain areas, whether it be a career, whether it be a relationship, whether it be in talking to people or trying to do something for our health or our relationship or careers, how this can really underpin and help us in our life. So let's get started with the Bruce Lee quote. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes a cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. You put water into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Wow. So that, you can just imagine when Bruce Lee is coming with any sort of people, maybe like 5 people at once, or whether it's kicks or punches, he has to react like water, you know. I've done martial arts myself in black belt and karate, and no move, even when you're doing the same move over and over, no move is ever the same when you're practicing in a competition. You have to be very reactive. So you do have to be like water. So let's make it a bit more practical and talk about a gas state, a vapor state, and then a solid state. And then we'll get into more of that water state. So before I just go into the gas state, I just want to realize that Bruce Lee's quote is really like that non-dualistic nature. So it's kind of integrating both aspects of being and doing. You're being relaxed, but you're also doing something. And that transcends, like, it transcends a lot of things. So you have that yin and yang, that miri piri, like in the political spectrum, right and left. It's that integrative aspect that will keep coming back. And I think that keeps coming if you're looking into spiritual stuff. It's always that integrative aspect. You're neither very positive nor neither very negative. You're having that harmony aspect where you're integrating both. So let's go into that. So as we go into these aspects, we'll see what seems to be more positive, what seems to be more negative, and see how society defines that and how we ourselves can integrate all aspects. Again, like masculine and feminine traditional roles as well. So we have the vapor state, the gaseous state, abstract, right? So when you're in a situation and you're feeling a bit stuck in that situation right now, you might be very stuck in a relationship or a conversation or a career um, aspect, and it's very hard to get a meta perspective. And when you're in the vapor state or when you're in a gaseous state, you're in a very abstract mode of thinking. You can separate yourself and develop that meta perspective, right? So when we're talking about South Asian culture, sometimes you can get very stuck in some cultural traditions and notions, and taking that meta perspective, so taking that totally large view of things where we can see how the culture came to be, how the culture is operating, how the culture is working, and getting a meta perspective of that and seeing the collective unconsciousness at play. And so that can be very good because we talked about personality types. Some personality types can tend towards a more abstract way of thinking and being. Some personality types can be more in the world and doing things, and might find it hard to get into the abstract mode. And so they might find that they've put all this work on climbing a ladder, and maybe 10, 20, 30 years time looking down at the ladder they've climbed in life and realized, I didn't take a step back to look at my life and I've climbed the wrong ladder here. Equally, some people in this more abstract form of thinking may always be in a fantasy world or be complacent and never actually go into the world and do some things. And so they actually never actualize themselves in the world. And so both states are important. And just realizing that everybody has these aspects inside of them, but according to some personality, how the nature and nurture has been, we might find ourselves tending to one or another. And so to focus on that strength in our society, but also integrating the aspect that we might be a bit more weaker or challenged in. So just to give a practical example, if you're like a young person and you're traveling all the time, and I mean not just traveling to learn, but also just traveling to escape life's worries, and maybe you're in a job and you're very in a solid state and you want to just get away from it all and travel, then you're going to the abstract space, you're going to that vapor state, and you're getting that meta perspective, which is good because you can see everything from a faraway distance and connect to yourself. But when you're in that way too long, then you can start to become detached, like that yogi in a cave, right? So that does give you wisdom. It does give you a abstract meta perspective, nature, seeing how the culture is operating around you. But again, it does have its downsides as well. So appreciating that, but also realizing where it has its limits. And you can also tell by people's facial features and their voice, if it's very high and airy fairy voice, and sometimes blah blah blah, and it can get associated with a more feminine energy. Um, Talking about the energy and the subconscious, not the actual gender and the people, then you can see that these traits, how they can show up in the subconscious. And then we'll move into the solid state as well. So just want to talk about this meta perspective and having a view of the collective unconscious and being in a more gaseous state and being a more abstract space, and why this is also important. Um, and also it's showing that you're a fractal in a much larger community of perspective, right? So you're a fragment and a lot of other systems going on. So it could be your culture, it could be the nation, it could be a system happening, it could be a family system, and all of these are affecting you. And going into that gaseous state really detaches yourself, and so you can see what's going on. And so practically that's really important because again, when we're in a conversation, we can detach ourselves and see what's happening at play. So these are some of the positive and negative. And just lastly, I want to touch on this, like is happening nowadays, like a lot of positive thinking and a lot of this manifest and positive thinking. And how we can think about this in more practical terms of is in sport, if we have a bow and arrow and we are doing archery and we're pulling that arrow tight very far back and we're getting all this positive thinking and affirmations and like yeah, but unless we release the arrow, then we're not going to actually get the full release. So instead of maybe thinking about the string pulling back as that positivity and thinking needs to be very positive and getting too caught up in the self-doubt about whether we hit the target and whether it's the right angle and just focusing on the positivity, we're also having to realize that we ourselves, the archer, has to be in control and has to manifest that positivity, whether the situation is positive or not. We actually have the ability at any time to manifest that energy. And then equally, every reaction has a equal and opposite reaction, not getting just tied to this positive vibes or positive thinking, to integrate that letting go aspect and um, taking the abstract into the real world. And so that nicely goes on to the solid state. Ice, right? Like water. So before it was like a gas, a vapor. Now it's like ice. So if you're familiar with chemistry, your lattices, right? You know you in your gaseous state, you're going to have a lot of free atoms, and it's going to be very largely dispersed. In a solid state, you're going to have these covalent ionic bonds, depending what material you use. In this case, we're using water developed into ice, and so it's going to have that solid state. So again, how our minds mimic nature, right? The nature and nurture, how we've adapted to the nature. That's how our minds are. So we can get into the solid aspect, and that is correlated to worldly power. Like I said, doing things. And we can find that in our own life, in our own culture, like in a Western culture, it's got that doing energy. So I know in a lot of archetypes, the most ancient archetype being Ayurveda, you'll have these ancient patterns happening, like tamas, restful energy, rajas, really excitable energy, and then you have that sattva energy, that more peaceful and learning or enlightening energy. And then you also have your different Ayurveda combinations based on that. Then going through society, like we have our archetypes nowadays, like we have the MBTI Myers-Briggs archetype, if you're familiar with that. ENTJ, right? That very doing things in the world. We are solid, we are ice. If you want a more religious connotations, in Sikhism, you have Sarbalo. So you have the all steel or all iron, right? Sarab meaning all and lo meaning steel or iron. And so that has a notion that you're integrating that more aggressive masculine energy. You're integrating that more assertive energy. So again, in a conversation, people might find it hard to have conflict, or people might find it hard to detach away from conflict and just let it be, right? So then knowing when to integrate that more assertive energy, that more masculine energy, that more doing energy. And then that also has to um, come face to face with a reality, right? So not being complacent of where you are in your life, noticing that in the collective, people have fought wars to have a stable, peaceful environment that we're in now, or even in a more shorter term, that your own grandparents or parents or grandparents, if you're in a immigrant community or South Asian community, that they have also sacrificed a lot in terms of their doing, so that you could have a life that requires much less work, for example. And so that also factors in that that masculine energy or that solid state energy about recognizing and coming to terms with the situation at hand and then doing something. So again, not just having the positive vibes, but also having a negative, let's call it negative vibes, or something that you have to contemplate within your subconscious or in the reality of things. But then realizing then there's no really positive or negative, and transcending that and seeing how you can integrate both aspects into the doing, the being and the becoming. So the just the being and the doing. So again, going back to that sports analogy, we're pulling back, we're getting all that positive vibes, but we're also letting go and then becoming the arrow, becoming the doing, becoming the sarbalo, becoming the sword, the iron. So you'll see a lot of samurais or warriors becoming one with the sword and then enacting that in your life. So you're not just detaching and having that abstract idea in your life, but actually landing the punch. So again, like Sunny said in the live stream, he's getting his anger, but he's integrating his anger into something constructive, whether it be his business or boxing. And again, like Muhammad Ali said, right? Float like a butterfly. So again, that detached nature, sting like a bee. So that solid state, and not getting caught up in one super masculine below solid state energy, and you're not getting caught in another, that gaseous vapor state, floating about all the time, um, lack of responsibility, but having the positives from both. So you're getting that positivity, that meta perspective, that abstract thinking, at the same time doing things in the world, facing your fears, facing what's happening in the real life, developing worldly power, and creating efficient systems to do so. And so that seems very hard, right? There's two things at play. There's a left hemisphere, there's a right hemisphere brain, there's a masculine, there's a feminine. What the heck's going on? Again, going through spiritual traditions, you'll find that singing, right? Gospel choir, indigenous singing with the drums, chanting. Um, in Indian tradition, you have a lot of rags. I can get more technical from the Sikh perspective because I understand that technically. You have many rags that embody the emotions, or maybe the left and right hemisphere and into the subconscious. And some will be a more get up there and doing energy. And so that rag will go into your subconscious and elicit that energy. Or if you're listening to a sohela, which is the nighttime shabad or sound current, that will elicit a more peaceful and graceful energy and a more detached and calming vibe. Or if you have a sukhmani, which is a peaceful state of being, that will work for the subconscious to ease any anxiety and suffering, right? So it will connect to that part psychologically that's more anxious, and through the rags, through the emotions, through the music, through the mathematics behind the music, that can trigger certain states within us. So what did Bruce Lee say when he said empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water? Like water, not like the gaseous state, not like the solid state, because you can actually start to integrate the ice and the gas. So you can, whatever situation you're in, you can become the cup, you can become the bottle, you can become the teapot, right? So you're adapting to your situation, but you're not just adapting your situation, becoming complacent. You can flow and you can crash. You can also have your own agenda, and you can also let the agenda flow through you. And so, how do we start to move within the structures? How do we integrate culture? See how the culture influencing us, see how the culture influences back. So, if you look at any great people, whether it be Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, the great singers like Sidhu Moosewala, taking the culture by making a new one, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, taking the culture already, but seeing what can drive innovation here. And so, really having that detached aspect, but really having that doing aspect as well. Again, that miri piri, holding that detached aspect in your mind, that wisdom, but then having to face the reality and creating efficient systems to do so. So, that is the semantics and a very abstract level how you can do things, but just a very practical level. If you're in a relationship, and if you're in a very business relationship and you have a conflict, if you're in a domestic relationship and you have a conflict, whether it be a partner or a child, father-child relationship or mother-child relationship, being detached, understanding the parent side, understanding your side, but then understanding how the culture plays into this and what in a year from now, what would you like the truth to be? Or if you were to die today, what would you like the outcome to be? So having that detached state and then actually facing your fears and telling that person from your perspective how it is, right? That's being formless and shapeless because you're adapting the truth, adapting the way you're telling the truth to that situation. So that's where you can't just be self righteous and tell it how it is. Whether that's where the love and kindness comes in, because love integrates that fear and of what would the person say or think, but that hope about what you think the truth is and that righteousness, but then doing so with love. And again, that's what Rosie said in that comment in Islam about that bird having two wings of hope and fear and the head of love. So, again, in a conversation, how can you say the right thing without being self righteous? How can you say the truth without trying to just be the truth itself, right? So, how can you get that across? And how can you implement that in your relationships and also your relationships in yourself? So, you're not getting stuck in life, but you're doing things that you're facing your fears and you're also doing things with love. And so I know that was very abstract, but hopefully I put in some little analogies here so you can see how the underpinning of philosophy about these dualisms can actually be integrated in a more spiritual context. But I don't like using the word spiritual. I prefer integrative. And so you're integrating your shadow, whether you find it hard to be more on the conflict side or less on the conflict side, more on that traditional masculine or feminine side, realizing you have both within you and just seeing where your personality type lies and seeing where you can integrate yourself best in society. Because we are on the spectrum and we might find we're doing better more in a cutting edge business world or more in a nursery environment, right? And just appreciating all of these aspects within us. Because perfection occurs as not just integrating and going in terms of one aspect, but taking a step back and also appreciating all these aspects within us and society and nature as a whole, because um, nature also has these characteristics in terms of the expansive of the universe, or like the intensity of fusion of a star, right? Or like a tree wilting and dying, or a lot of potential in a seed. So the mind also has this type of natural process. So I hope you find that interesting, a bit more intuitive, a bit more abstract, a bit more integrative today. So that was Bruce Lee's mindset. Be water, my friend. And so if you are interested in coaching, whether it be in a relationship to yourself, or within your culture, integrating your culture, or obviously in a career where you are just feeling a bit windswept, you feel like you lost your purpose a bit, In your career, you feel like you're a bit burned by the systems in the career and a bit overwhelmed, or you feel like your flow is just untapped, feeling a bit pigeonholed. If you're feeling like that and you really want to integrate these different states and become in the flow state, I am creating a system based on this, and I see all the philosophies based on this. Go slow to go far. You're going slow, going into that vapor state. We're becoming abstract. We're getting that meta perspective. What is going on here? We're getting in touch to our state of mind and seeing how the abstract is working. We're then going to that two aspect, but that two I'm breaking down into two parts. So your way of functioning in life, we can call it your ego, your personality type, how you turn up in life, what you like doing, and then watching your personality type, right? From that higher state of consciousness, separating yourself again, seeing how you can move within that structure. How can you affect the structure you're in, and how does it affect you, whether it be family structure or career structure? And that's about that aqueous state. So how can we start leveraging you strategically, your personality, and then to go far, right? Then that's that solid state of being, that cerbalo, that all steel, that self sovereignty. How can you move in life with an agenda? How can you create efficient systems that serve you? Hack away at the inessentials and create these systems and create some sense of worldly power so you can enact your personality and your interest and your flow state into the world. So that is breaking down go slow to go far. And so I've made a coaching system. And so if you're interested for a free strategy session, just hit my link below in my description box. You can book a free 1 hour calendar session with me. Thank you, everybody, for today. If you enjoyed listening to this, give a thumbs up. And just remember, be water, my friend. Bye, everybody.